Alright, so today we're going to be talking about factoring out the greatest common factor. So you guys haven't done factoring. Well, shoot, you guys may have never done factoring. I know they do it in 7th grade. You guys skipped 7th grade. You may have done it at some point earlier than that. I don't know. But you haven't really done it in 8th or secondary 1. So this might be new to some of you guys. But it should be a pretty easy concept to figure out. So one thing that we're basically looking for is to look for common factors in each one. And we do that by rewriting each equation or expression in this case as the prime factor form. Now what that means is you simplify each number down to its prime factors. And those are the prime numbers that you would multiply by each other to get that number. For example, let's look at the number 8. Okay, what do you do with 8 or what can you multiply to get to 8? Well, you can do 2 times 4, right? So 2 times 4 would equal 8, right? So 2 is a prime number. Prime number is a number that can multiply only by that can only be divided by itself or by 1. Like you can't multiply by anything or divide by anything else and still end up with 2. Okay? Or even number. You'll get like a fraction or a decimal. 4 can be divided by itself in 1 as well as 2, right? So it can be broken down. What can I multiply by 4 by to get to 4? I can multiply by 2 2's, right? 2 times 2. So if I think about it, 8 could equal 2 times 2 times 2. That's the same thing, right? That is the prime factored form of 8. 2 times 2 times 2, 2 to the 3rd power, is equal to 8, right? That's the idea of what we're doing. We're looking for this form, and then we're going to remove it and put it in front to get our final answer. For example, if I did 2, if I took out a factor of 2, I would have 2 times 2 times 2, right? Would that still equal 8? 2 times 4, does that equal 8? Yeah, that would equal 8, right? So that's kind of the idea of what we're doing, is we're taking out a factor and we're putting it in the factored form. You'll need to be able to do this to be able to solve some of our algebraic equations that we're going to have this year. So you need to know how to factor. So let's start by looking at a very simple one. So 2 is already a prime number, right? But there's 3 x's, so let's break it down. 2 times x times x times x. Plus 3 is a prime number, so 3, and there's only 1x. So what I'm looking for is a common factor in each problem. Well, 2 and 3 aren't the same number, so they're not common. Each one does have a factor of x, though. So I can take out an x and put it in front. So I'd have x times, there's only 2 x's left here, so it'd be 2x squared. And then there's just a 3 there, so plus 3. Okay? That is the factored form. That's the answer. Now, this is still the same thing as 2x to the 3rd plus 3x, right? Because if I multiply the x back through, I would get 2x to the 3rd plus 3x. Okay, so it's just another way of simplifying, basically, these problems more than they already are. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at number 2. So this time I've got some numbers that I can divide a factor to the prime factored form, right? 4, as I've already discussed, the same as 2 times 2. So 2 times 2, and then there's 2 x's, so x and x. And then 8, I've already discussed, is 2 times 2 times 2. So plus 2 times 2 times 2, and then there's an x. And then minus 12, think of it as the same as 4 times 3. And 4 can be broken down to 2 2's, so minus 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. So that is the prime factored form. Now I'm looking for what each of these has in common. And when I look at each of these terms, they don't all have x's, but they each have 2 2's. So that means I can take those 2 2's out and just leave everything as it is here, right? Now 2 times 2 is 4, so technically I'm taking out a 4. So a 4 is going out in front, and then I'm left with x squared and 2x, so plus 2x, and a 3, so a minus 3. Now if I were to multiply back through, 4 times x squared is 4x squared, yep. 4 times 2x is 8x, yep. 4 times negative 3 would be negative 12. That is my factored form. Okay? Not too tough, right? Just a little tedious, and you gotta know your times tables a little bit. The better you know your times tables, the quicker and easier this will be. Okay? Let's look at one of these more complicated ones. Let's look at number 5. Now, at this point, you can write out 5x's and all that. But really what you're looking for is if they all have x's, what's the lowest number? Because that's what you're taking out. Okay? Now the constants, I still think you should break down to their prime form, because it's usually only like 2 numbers. Okay? Because that'll make it easier to see the numbers that are the same. So 9 would be, and again, if you know your times tables, you could probably pick out these common factors a lot easier. But we'll do 3 times 3 for 9. Those are the prime numbers, x to the 5th, y. 21, you can get by doing 9 times 3, right? Yeah, no. Ugh, what am I thinking? 7 times 3. 7 times 3. Those are both prime numbers. So minus 7 times 3, x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd. Okay. Then I've got 3 times 4, or 3 times 2 times 2. So plus 3 times 2 times 2, x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. Okay. First thing I'm going to look for is my coefficients. What's the common, if any, coefficient here? Looks like each one of them has a 3. So I'm going to take out a 3. That's going to go in front. Then I'm going to look at my x's. What's the least x number? They all have x's. So the least is 3. So that means they all have at least 3 x's. So I'm going to pull out 3 x's. And then the least y, they all have y's, so the least y is just 1 y. So pulling out 1, 3, 3 x's, 1 y from each of them. Then what's going to be left? So I have 1, 3 left in that first term, and I pulled out 3 of those x's, so that leaves 2 of them. So x squared, and I pulled out the 1y, so it's just 3x squared. Next, I'm left with a 7, so minus 7, and I pulled out all the x's, and there's 1y left, so 1y. And then I pulled out the 3, leaving the 2 2's or the 4, so plus 4. Pulled out the 1x, or the 3x's, so there's 1x left, and then I pulled out 1y, leaving y squared. And that is my factored form. If I go back through and multiply through, 3x squared times this is going to give me 3x to the 5th y. Or 9x to the 5th y, which is what I got here. And I'm going to get that as I go through and multiply each of these. Okay? And that is pretty much what you're doing to find the greatest common factor. A little tedious, but it's, again, not too tough. You just got to break down the numbers, and then it comes pretty easy. Now, if this is too hard keeping track of the variables, again, break them down even more. Make it like this. It's going to take up space, but it'll make it easier, so you'll make the little mistakes that some of you might make.